Is it on? Can you hear me? Oh, good. Welcome, everyone. We're thrilled to have you here. Welcome first to the museum. A spectacular day to be here. There's so much going on, and it's a beautiful place to be anyway. But particularly today, we're excited to have you here because we're launching a number of things today. One is that we are obviously honoring these outstanding women in military and aviation history here, but the generations you can see are represented, probably 6 decades are represented here today of women who've just made impressive marks, and we're thrilled to have honoring them here today. And you'll hear from each of them as the morning progresses. But secondly, we're launching a Buy a Brick Legacy program. We are building a memorial garden on campus just outside the front door and across the drive. There's a beautiful garden, and a path is being built to honor mothers of veterans from all decades. And the bricks are being sold out front. The money from the bricks are funding our restoration group. So it's a multifaceted campaign, and we're excited about that. So take a look and take advantage of that and help us launch that program today. But thirdly, and I think most importantly, we're launching today the museum as being an intergenerational innovation center. And what we mean by that is what we've been doing all along. We provide programs for kids, as you know, like Chess for Success is here today, but we provide STEM-related curriculum programs all the time for kids. So school groups are here every day of the week. We have camps and programs teaching kids about science, technology, engineering, and math in really fun, creative, hands-on ways through robotics and different camps. So it's a great program. But we also have, as you know, our docents that represent decades of involvement as veterans. They're veteran docents, and the interaction between the kids and the docents has always been something we've been very proud of, and we're continuing to embrace that. So today we're really formally launching the museum as a regional center for intergenerational innovations, because we can all learn from each other regardless of how old we are. So thank you for being here. We hope that some of the kids from Chess for Success will take a break between matches and come down as well. We know that they'll be involved with some of the question and answer period later. But for now, I'd like to turn this over to Hilda Perello, Director of Education, and she will introduce the panelists and lead the conversation. And again, I'm Ann Witzel, the Executive Director. Thank you for being here. Welcome to Evergreen Aviation and Space Museum. Sorry.
Good morning. Thank you for coming on this gorgeous, beautiful, sunny day. First of all, I want to say thank you, and I want to say thank you to every single woman sitting here with me, because if it weren't for them, I wouldn't be here. But I want them to tell you their stories. So I'm going to introduce them to you very briefly, let them talk for about 5 minutes, and then be the evil person that then tells them to sit down to let the other person talk. And then we're going to open it to the audience. We're going to pass a microphone around so that you can ask him any question. Anything goes. So I would like to introduce Captain Michelle Buckley. Michelle is a judge advocate at the U.S. Army. She grew up in Olympia, in Washington. Michelle went to the University of Colorado. She majored in political science and in Chinese. She then spent 2 years in Washington, D.C., working on international political development projects in East and Southeast Asia. She attended law school at the University of Washington and commissioned into the United States Army in 2012. Her first assignment was with the famed 82nd Airborne Division, where she was able to be one of the few attorneys in the country who is paid to jump out of airplanes. She earned the prestigious Senior Parachutist Badge while serving as the jump master for the 82nd Airborne's Assault Combat Post. She deployed to Afghanistan in 2014 as an operational law attorney where she advised on rules of engagement and targeting. Michelle was transferred to the Joint Base Lewis McChord in the spring of 2015 and is currently serving as a prosecutor. Michelle was selected to be one of the first women to serve as a legal advisor in an operational Special Forces battalion and will begin her assignment with the 1st Special Forces Group in June. Please welcome Michelle.
Didn't realize I was speaking then. Is this catching? Can you hear me now? Okay. Thank you for that introduction, Hilda. It's hard for me to sit on this panel and certainly to be the first speaker here because I pale in comparison in anything that I've done to the women that are behind me. I have to say that my experience in the military has been quite smooth and quite easy as a woman compared to the stories of generations past, and that's thanks to the women that you will be hearing from following me. So my background is quite diverse, and I think I'm the only woman on the panel who doesn't actually fly a airplane or a helicopter. So again, just another way that I feel I pale in comparison to them. All I do is jump out of the back of them when they're piloting them successfully. I did deploy with a combat aviation brigade, and as a jump master with the 82nd, I got to know the various types of airframes that we flew quite well. Never in my life did I think I'd know so much about C-17s, C-130s, Chinooks, Apaches, knowing the difference between different aircraft, what they can do in combat and what they can do to support our missions both here and abroad is something that I never thought would be part of my legal career. I really thank my parents for raising me in an environment in which they never treated me as a girl, or they never explained that there would be a difference between what would be expected of me as a woman or as a man. I remember actually just down the road from here, I was at Linfield College as a probably 14-year-old. I was racing bikes, and I used to go by, my nickname is Mickey, which people don't realize is a female name. And my dad, who's sitting in the front row there, dropped me off at this bike camp. I was racing, and there was a national team training camp, and I showed up, and they look at me, and they thought, "Oh, Mickey, we totally thought you were a guy." And it turned out I was going to be the only girl at this camp. They thought they were inviting a young 14-year-old male, and they got a young 14-year-old female. My dad looked at me and he said, "Look, you earned this spot regardless of your gender. They didn't know what they were getting. I'll take you home if you want, but just know you're good enough to be here, and it shouldn't matter if you're a boy or a girl." And that was sort of a formative moment for me, and happened right down the road, so it's fun to be back here. But that really shaped how I was raised, and it's shaped how I've approached my career, whether it was before law school, in law school, and then in my decision to join the military and to choose the path that I've chosen. So it really is an honor to be here. I look forward to hearing from all of these women, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have about my military experience and my experience kind of going into these roles as they open up as a woman in the military today. So thank you.
Our next speaker is Charlene Miles. Charlene grew up in Idaho. She started flying in 2007 at Silver Hawk of Aviation Academy in Caldwell, Idaho. She finished her commercial and instrument helicopter ratings. Then she moved to Eastern Oregon in 2008 and completed her instructor rating. She joined the Whirly Girls in 2010 and helped with the merchandising booth at the Heli Expo. She then moved to McMinnville exactly 1 year ago on May 11th and was voted secretary of the board for the Whirly Girls last month. She is currently working with Connect Aviation, the FBO across the street, and she handles everything, the office, the helicopters, and is also working a full-time job driving a semi-truck for Milky Way. Please welcome Charlene Miles.
Good morning. Thank you guys for coming out. Let's get this thing taller here. This isn't by far the first time I've been asked to describe my inspiration for flying. People often ask, why would you do that? What got you into that? And the only thing I can say is divine intervention, a dead-end job, and a Kevin Costner movie with helicopters and Ashton Kutcher in uniform. I grew up in Idaho, like southern Idaho, not the pretty part, the like dry, deserty, overly sunny part. In January 2007, I kind of had a quarter life crisis. I was in an office job, totally dead-end job at the Humane Society there, which happened to be on the airport in Boise, which is actually also a part of an Air Force base there. And my office just happened to be positioned right in front of the Air Force base, and there was this week where there was just military helicopters outside my window every day rattling my desk, and I just was sitting at my desk staring out the window like you do when you have an office job. And I thought, this is it. I'm not going to sit at a desk for the rest of my life. There's got to be more to this. I want to start my career and get things going. And I will tell you, this all happened in 1 week. Through this week, there was all the helicopters, but there was also the movie The Guardian with Kevin Costner and Ashton Kutcher. There's also a movie called The Rat Race. I don't know if anyone has seen it, with Whoopi Goldberg. There's this scene with one of the pilots, is a female pilot, and she was in the airport lounge, and this poor sap hit on her and decided that he wanted to go fly with her. And she passed over her boyfriend's house and found him cheating on her with his ex-girlfriend named Charlene. And they started throwing stuff out of the helicopter on his pickup truck, paint, wrenches, everything. And I said, I want to do that. Yes, I still use paper, by the way. After that, I got my student loans, which in 2007 was really easy to do. And 2 weeks later, I gave the school all my money, and I got my books and my fancy new flight bag, and took my first ever helicopter flight. It has been a constant challenge ever since. Becoming a pilot, a helicopter pilot, or stuck wing pilot is not for the faint of heart. Us female pilots have an amazing organization called the Whirly Girls. Through this organization, I have met some of the most strong, crazy, amazing, bullheaded women ever in my life. And I was recently voted to be one of their leaders on the board of the Whirly Girls. The camaraderie and energy that emulates from this group of women alone makes the tribulations of becoming a pilot entirely worthwhile. Through Facebook, we've kept in touch through the year, encouraging, supporting, and commiserating each other through the rigorous tests we have to take through school every year and through our entire careers. And then once a year, the crazy pilots migrate from countries around the world to Heli Expo. Heli Expo to a helicopter pilot is like Comic-Con. And it's got new flight suits and sparkling new helicopters and new engine designs and tons of new people to meet. And it's in a new part of the country almost every year. Next year, next spring, it'll be in Texas. Sometimes it's in Florida, California, Las Vegas. This is where all the Whirly Girls get to meet each other, network, bond, party, and combine forces to host an annual banquet, a formal banquet that we have every year. And then we also have a merchandise booth where we sell jackets and necklaces and hats and shirts and all that nonsense. We also have a new program that we're starting. We actually started last year, and we're doing it again next year when we get to Texas. It's called Give It a Whirl. And when we go to Dallas in March, we'll be using a local airport to coordinate with some of the local helicopter pilots to fly in and talk to kids about flying and aviation and show off their aircraft and give some rides. I do want you all to know that we take flying very seriously. Aviation is an incredibly addicting and dangerous job. And finishing your schooling so that you can actually get paid to fly instead of paying someone else to teach you to fly, it takes a lot in student loans and patience and perseverance and time. I would say almost every pilot, civilian pilot anyways, has probably failed at least one of the 30 tests that we have to take to finish our entire training to get into our teaching positions. Oh, okay. I will say, though, that walking out to a helicopter thinking that I get to fly this thing today instills a kind of confidence that is extremely difficult to find anywhere else. And when you land that perfect landing next to the fuel station at some random airport, and the boys stop in their tracks expecting a guy to get out, and they see a woman getting out of the right seat. It's priceless. And we all have to choose a profession, right? And usually you'll have to go to school for that profession, so why not flying, right? I am currently working across the street at McMinnville Airport. A little bit of flying, a little bit of office stuff, but we really want to encourage you guys to come over, bring family, friends. There's even picnic tables and stuff there. You can hang out, and plenty of old-timer pilots to share lots of stories with you. Thank you guys for coming.
So we're going to go from a younger generation to a historical, wonderful generation. Margaret Lutz graduated from Linfield College in spring of 1943. She then taught 1 year at Myrtle Point School in Myrtle Point, Oregon. And then in the spring of 1944, she joined the U.S. Navy to become a women volunteer for emergency services, also known as a WAVE, control tower operator. Her enlistment was for the duration and 6 months. When both the European and South Pacific conflicts ended in 1945, she and 350,000 other women in uniform were held 6 more months, then discharged back to civilian life in 1946, with full veteran benefits, but a total lack of recognition for their service. Recognition did not come a reality until the 1990s, when our country began to collect women veterans from a number of U.S. involved engagements such as Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, and the Gulf War. Peggy credits her 2 years of military service for teaching her that life has checks and balances, and life expects personal responsibility. Every assignment in personal life has to be completed to the highest level. Once she was a civilian, Peggy's job history, which includes getting married, having 2 daughters, and a succession of 24 vocational directions due to her female emancipation given by the military, inspired her curiosity and her itching foot. And I will let her tell you the rest.
It's such an honor to be here with all these other ladies, the young, beautiful, accomplished people that I'm sitting with. It's really an honor to be invited. I asked Anne what I should talk about, and she said, "Oh, just talk about some of your experiences." Well, during World War II, it wasn't a very exciting time for anybody, whether you were in the military or civilian, because we were so focused. It was just a matter that we were serious, and it was serious times. However, I thought maybe what I would do would be to talk about my uniform, jewelry, and sex. And I thought that would keep everybody's attention, and not in that order. So I'm going to start with sex. When I went home and I told my parents I had just signed up to go into the military, I think my mother and father joined hands and dropped to their knees in invocation. Please, God, is this real? Our only daughter going into service? Because at that time, the reputation of women in the military was not chastened. It was that you were going into the service without the word the, if you get my drift. It was just sad, but you know how rumors spread, and that was just the basis for the civilian population looking on women as not being all that nice. Well, of course, I wasn't aware of that. It didn't matter anyway, because I wanted to go into the military. Now, about the uniform. I had sat in the library at Linfield College for hours and hours looking at the posters. The military had just opened up in 1942 to women, and it was necessary because it was a male world, and males had trouble fighting battles in Europe and in South Pacific, and being so absolutely devastated. They were losing warm bodies. They didn't have enough soldiers, and they instituted the draft. The draft came up in particularly when Hirohito hit the South Pacific, hit Hawaii, and tried to take out our Air Force and our battleships, and he did a very good job, halfway job. So they wound up with having to draft, or not draft, but having to accommodate women. Horrible logistics problem connected with that, because everything had to be duplicated. They had to have special female barracks. They had to have all kinds of accommodations for women that weren't necessary for men, and it was a nightmare, I realize. But when they got us in, they treated us that same way, like we were just extraneous. We were unnecessary but necessary. It was hard to deal with that on the basis of the fact that most of us were in for the reason that we really wanted to do something important. We wanted to participate. We wanted to do our part. I was one of those many who went in as a seaman, or I went into the tower as a third-class operator, and I passed all the tests. And there was one opening, and there were 3 of us who applied, 2 men and I, who took the test. And of course, I was bypassed. The man was promoted, and that was the way it was all during my service. It was that the men were given the deference. I need to go back to my uniform for just a second, because it is time-worn, and I make jokes about it now for the fact that you young people don't know the word moths and the implications of the word moths. But this uniform has wool in it. And of course, the moths love wool. And so over the years that it was hanging in a closet or that it was packed away, it was dynamite. The moths feasted on it like crazy. And I call it now my safe house for street moths. I'm afraid to send it to the cleaners any more than I can absolutely get by with, because I'm afraid all I'll get back is the holes. It has holes all over it. I had to kind of tie together one little one dead front center in my skirt, and it was just one of those things that. But with inspection, I have to tell you that we were taught in boot camp that we couldn't have our hair below the collar length. And the other thing was that we had to have straight stocking seams.
Straight as an arrow.
No problem now because of pantyhose. You guys, you know. Anyway, and then we had stockings that came up to the hips. There was no nylon. There were no nylons because nylon was taken for parachutes. There were no girdles left over because the rubber went to the tires of all the military vehicles. So we had very unsubstantial rayon socks. When you'd bend a knee, you had the big bag. You'd pull it up, and it would keep coming up to your armpits. And it was troubling times for a woman, believe me. But we got around that. And in my book, I describe, the title of the book is Never Salute with a Broken Garter. And I went through that experience of a broken garter. So anyway, I'm a proud pioneer woman of the United States Navy. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Martha Meeker. And I introduced her as Martha Meeker because she'll tell you the other side. She is the city manager for McMinnville, Oregon, where she directs the day-to-day operations of city administration, community development, finance, information technology, fire, library, parks, recreation, municipal court, planning, and the police. She oversees a 180 full-time employee staff and a $100 million budget. She's also a governor-appointed member of the Oregon State Aviation Board and a 28-year veteran of the United States Air Force, retiring with the rank of Brigadier General. And I'll let her tell you the rest.
Hey, thanks, Hilda. Ann was up here saying that today is, this panel is Women in Aviation History. That's when you know you're old. You're now on a panel to commemorate history. Mickey, I just want to clarify one thing real quick. I'm Air Force. She's Army. The airplanes will land. You don't need to jump out of the back of them. I don't know why. I got a lot of Army friends. I keep telling them that. It will land. It's a real pleasure to be here today because these folks are amazing. I mean, you heard what Peggy had to offer on her history. You're going to hear from Senator Betsy Johnson, an amazing individual who's done a lot of work not only on the aviation world but for transportation and just for all the citizens here in the Willamette Valley. All these folks are just fun to be around. And I would have to say that of my career, that kind of sums it up. It was fun to be around. And I think when you take a look here at all the aviation assets and the aerospace assets, it's just an attraction. I had no idea growing up because I was in college and I was going to teach math and do high school stuff and local community, town of 200, went to high school in a town of 2,000, one high school in the entire county. I didn't see all the fancy stuff. But I got to do one thing, and if any parent out there, if you've got kids in college or even kids in high school or junior high, these kind of engagements are incredible because in the span of 3 months, I had an opportunity to go do an internship for one of my computer science degrees. Once again, no intention of doing anything but teach high school math, might use some computer science because that was coming up. But I had to go do an internship because the college said you don't graduate until you do one. So I got a chance to do an internship at NASA Langley because I followed my favorite math professor out there. It was kind of similar to this, only NASA Langley is a big industrial complex. It's like a mini city. And I still remember going through the main boulevard there in Virginia, and the individual who has greeted me, who's going to be, I'm 21, but he's my older mentor of 24. He's over, giving me the tour. Over here is where they're going to do wind tunnel design for the next fourth generation engines. Over here is they're building parts for the space station. And having grown up in a town of 200, anybody about 50, 40 years old, 60-year-old, somewhere around in there, all right, there we go. Anybody a fan of Star Trek? Oh yeah. Dude, first huge small town fan of Star Trek. That UHF channel where you just get it in, and if you can see it at 11 o'clock at night, you're rocking. Well, that's all I could think about. And I think that's what aviation and aerospace is. It is just cool, and it just excites the mind. Because had I not done that internship, if I hadn't seen something like this, I would be in my small town of 200 teaching math. Not that that's a bad thing, but I have since gone on to do a lot of things which I would have tremendously missed had I not had the opportunity. But it's because I had a chance to see something cool. And I think I succeeded in it once I got into the aerospace and aviation realm because it's newer. Folks don't realize that there's things you can't do because it's new. And so folks, maybe, we accept, failure as well as success. There's just something when you get around a bunch of folks who are involved in the aviation, we can sit down and it's totally acceptable to do something totally harebrained and weird. And you know what? And succeed at it. I mean, think about it. Here you are, Mr. Wright and Mr. Wright, the two brothers, and they decided that they're going to fly. It was, the 1900s. Nobody in the centuries before then, I mean, before Jesus Christ, before the caveman, no one had flown, right? Somewhere they just decided that they were going to do it. It took a while for a human being to finally decide it, but once they did, it opened up some really amazing things to happen. I mean, going to the moon, is that not cool? That is cool. So I would invite all of you, if you've got children, once again, if you're looking to inspire, it doesn't get any better than to be here in the aerospace world. And even if you don't stay with us, having the chance to get around folks who know how to dream and know how to open their eyes and to do something larger than yourself is amazing. Because I will contend that somebody's got to do great things. Why not us? So with that, I'm going to get off the stage. Thank you very much.
So 40 years ago, going to the moon was the goal. Now the goal is to get students to build airplanes. Jackie Murphy is the newly hired executive director for Airway Science for Kids. She's a passionate component of access to educational opportunities for children of color and underserved youth. She has spent the last 18 years of her professional career working with youth programs for nonprofit organizations and higher education institutions that focus on student success and goal attainment. Within the last 5 years, Jackie's enthusiasm for educational programs grew to include raising awareness and increasing opportunities in science, technology, engineering, and math, and flying. For the same population, she has successfully launched initiatives to increase access to classes and activities in after-school programs for middle and high school youth with the purpose of deepening and broadening the students' experiences beyond their classroom. She has a Bachelor's of Science in Sociology from Portland State University and a Master's in Education from Heritage University. She serves on the leadership team for the Oregon Girls Collaborative Project, which focuses on creating champions for gender equality in STEM education and careers for girls. She is in the STEAM, the A stands for Art, Coalition, and the Oregon Library Services and Technology Act Advisory Council. In her spare time, she is the assistant women's basketball coach for Roosevelt High School in North Portland. Please welcome Jackie Murphy.
Good morning. First, I need to say that I am just in honor to be in this crowd right now. To be here with these fabulous women. I mean, my hats are off to you. I feel like I'm, I barely shine under your guys' light. So, but really, I'm here because exactly what Martha was talking about. I want to inspire young women and youth to engage in STEM opportunities and aviation. I have to take a step back and tell you a little bit about how I came into STEM. As you heard, my background or my degree is in sociology and education. So I truly have always been in a position where I wanted to open doors and opportunities for youth to just pursue whatever educational track they wanted to pursue. The world for STEAM, or science, technology, engineering, arts, or aviation, and math, opened up for me about 3 years ago. I was in a position where I was helping college students basically access internships. And I was working at an organization that served underserved youth and girls. And I was in a position to help them get connected to internships at corporate business partners. And so as I'm meeting with these corporate and business partners, they're sharing to me about how there's such a lack of underserved youth, students of color, and girls who are in the STEM fields. And that they truly wanted to get more youth in these internships to open up their eyes about the opportunities. So I was so excited. I was like, yes, here's these partners that want to put kids in these great positions to open up their lives and just to learn about what are the opportunities. But then I went back to the organization that I was working for, and I went to the department that worked with the college students, and I said, great, guess what? I've got 5 internships for students who want to pursue science or math or engineering or technology. And they looked at me and they said, we don't have any youth who are majoring in those areas. I said, what do you mean? They said, "Oh, our kids aren't pursuing those degrees. They're not in those majors. And so to get into that internship, they had to have that major. So there, right away, I realized we're not getting kids far enough to even be able to access these opportunities. So what can we do? What can I do? So in the role that I was in, we started after-school programming in STEM, and just starting kids earlier, getting them exposed to these different STEM avenues. So we got them involved in robotics and coding and all these different things. But I only got to do this a partial time of my job, and I realized I wanted to do more. So I had this wonderful, wonderful opportunity that I was introduced to airway science for kids, where I was able to take my love and passion for STEAM and education and now tie it to the world of aviation. So my little bit of background in aviation, I'm not an aviator. I don't have a pilot. I'm going to be. I have Betsy and a few others that have very much decided that part of my professional development plan will be learning how to fly a plane. So I will be learning how to fly a plane. But really, my exposure to aviation is I'm an Air Force brat. Yeah, exactly. So I grew up in the Air Force with my dad, and I was really in a great position to be able to be exposed to aircrafts and aviation and aerospace very early on. Went to all the different air shows and was always intrigued by these wonderful machines. So to finally be in a position where I could take STEAM and aviation and be able to open up these doors and avenues to kids, to just get them aware of what are the opportunities, I had the best job ever. I get to do this full time. I get to work with kids and let them know, here are all these different pathways. You don't have to be a pilot. If you are, wonderful. But here's all these other career pathways and academic pathways that are related to airway science, related to aviation, that you can pursue. And the key here is that they didn't know these opportunities existed. They didn't know that they would be able to learn how to fly a plane. They didn't know they'd be able to learn how to build a plane. We're talking about real aircrafts here. We're not talking about remote control aircrafts. We have high school students who are building experiential aircrafts and learning how to fly them. What a wonderful opportunity for youth. So if these open up their eyes, these opportunities open up their eyes about what are the possibilities and just encourages them to take those steps forward, then we're doing our job. And hopefully next time we have this presentation, 5 years from now, we'll be able to see 20 women up here or 20 individuals who are motivated by these experiences that we've been talking about today. So thank you so much for letting me share my piece of the story, and have a great day.
So we have helicopters and airplanes in Scappoose, helicopters here in McMinnville, and airplanes in Independence. So we're going to get you flying before the day is over. Our next presenter is Deborah Plymate. Deborah is a representative of the 99's International Organization of Women Pilots, the one that was founded by Amelia Earhart. She learned to fly at the age of 21 and became an air traffic controller. Her duty assignments included Honolulu Center, and then control towers and flight service stations in Nevada, California, Virginia, and Oregon. She also worked in Washington, D.C. in the Department of Transportation's Office of the Secretary of Transportation and at the Federal Aviation Administration headquarters. She currently operates Nutch Aviation at Independence State Airport with her husband. She is a test proctor, an instrument and basic ground instructor, a sport pilot flight instructor, and in her driveway or her hangar, she has a 1947 Aranca Chief, a 1962 Cessna 150, and a 1958 Cessna 182. Deborah is also a Flying Companion seminar presenter. She's a Young Eagle pilot, a youth aviation mentor, and the Federal Aviation Administration Safety Team representative. Please welcome Deborah.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me today. I am a general aviation pilot. I did fly into McMinnville this morning in my Cessna 150, so it was a lot of fun. and I'm a member of the 99s, the International Organization of Women Pilots. Now, I have been in aviation all my life. My mother told me that on the way home from the hospital after I was born, my dad took her to the airport so she could see how I liked flying. And growing up, we pretty much lived in the back seat of my parents' airplane. We went to the beach on the weekends, and we flew down to Mexico on spring vacation. My father trained as an architect. He graduated from the University of Oregon, and he just happened to learn how to fly at the Eugene Air Park and spent the first few years of his career designing and building houses in the Willamette Valley. And then he ended up getting an opportunity to work for the Oregon State Board of Aeronautics. Because of his background in architecture and his interest in aviation, he was hired to be the supervisor of airports for the state of Oregon, which included developing new airports. He actually built 3 airports in Oregon, the Brookings, Cottage Grove, and the Independence Airport, where I now live and work. And then after a couple years, he was hired to manage the Metropolitan Oakland International Airport. So his experience in management led to another opportunity, and we moved to California. And before long, I was old enough to get a work permit, and I took advantage of my connections and got a job at the airline catering service. Back in those days, the airlines hired attractive flight attendants to serve elegant meals on the airline. So I was setting up meals and driving down Earhart Road every day to get to work, right across the street from the flight school and the airplanes, and one thing led to the next, and I learned how to fly airplanes. And back in those days, it was about 30 years after Amelia Earhart had spent a lot of time at Oakland Airport. There were pictures in some of the hangars of Amelia in her Pitcairn autogyro when she did her first cross-country flight to Oakland, and in her Lockheed Vega after she became the first person to solo across the Pacific Ocean, and in her Lockheed Electra. She had departed from Oakland on her around the world flight. And Amelia had also been the first president of the 99s, the International Organization of Women Pilots. Back in 1929, there were 117 licensed women pilots in the United States, and 99 of them joined the organization, which met in New York. Their mission was the advancement of aviation and mutual support. And one of the charter members of that organization was a woman from Oregon, Edith Foltz. She had married a pilot from World War I, and they moved to Portland, Oregon. And Joe Foltz was a barnstormer at the Swan Island Airport, and he and Edith hired a barnstormer to take their airplane on the road, and he called Edith after he had a mishap in Hood River. He had damaged the propeller, and she jumped in the car and drove out to Hood River and took a propeller to him, and while there she decided to go barnstorming with her. And she said when she got back to Portland, she was flying the airplane. And so Edith was one of the first 99s, and it's a great network. It's not very often that you meet other women who share your passion for aviation in the neighborhood. And so when Amelia Earhart visited Portland, the 99s in Oregon numbered 5. And they met Amelia at the Portland airport and had their meeting there. And then over the years, the organization grew. Today we have got almost 100 members of the 99s in Oregon. And our mission has expanded to include education and scholarships. Hilda mentioned that we teach flying companion seminars. We do programs for youth, and we have scholarship opportunities. We've got opportunities for student pilots. We help women get advanced certificates and ratings. We coordinate scholarships with other organizations. Right now, AOPA is offering a flight training scholarship. They grant something like 20 scholarships a year. And we are really big on helping young women. I am also a Young Eagle pilot. We have introductory flights for students. They're free. Any student ages 8 to 17, come fly with us. We have rallies at Independence Airport twice a year. And once they come for their introductory flight, they are offered free online ground schools and other scholarships for their flight training. So please bring your young people and young women to Independence and have a tour and come fly with us. And I've got my cards to pass out if you want to visit with me after the panel. Thank you very much.
Our last speaker is Senator Betsy Johnson. Senator Johnson received her undergraduate degree in history from Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota, and her law degree from the Northwestern School of Law at Lewis and Clark College. A licensed commercial pilot for both fixed-wing and rotor-wing aircraft, she founded Transwestern Helicopters, Incorporated, in 1978. The helicopter division of the firm was sold in 1993, and the company, now known as Transwestern Aviation, Inc., is managed by her husband, John Helm. In September of 1993, Senator Johnson was selected as manager of the Aeronautics Division of the Oregon Department of Transportation, a position she held until September of 1998. During the 1999 legislative session, she was vice president for legislative affairs for the Oregon Pilots Association, where she successfully championed legislation that created the Oregon Department of Aviation. Senator Johnson has served on numerous local, regional, and national boards and commissions, including the Oregon Health Sciences University Foundation, the Dornbecker Children's Hospital, the Oregon Public Broadcasting Foundation, and the High Desert Museum. Senator Johnson currently serves on a number of regional boards, most recently elected as a member of the Board of Visitors, Northwestern School of Law and of Lewis and Clark College. She also serves as the president of the Samuel S. Johnson Foundation. In the 2016 legislative session, Senator Johnson serves as the vice co-chair of the Joint Committee on Ways and Means, co-chair of the Ways and Means Transportation and Economic Development Subcommittee, and is a member of the Ways and Means General Government Subcommittee. Senator Johnson has served on Ways and Means since her first session. Please welcome another female pilot, Senator Betsy Johnson.
Thank you very much. I want to acknowledge one of my legislative colleagues, Senator Richard Devlin, who is the chair of Ways and Means. He's the guy with all the money, so go talk to Richard. Also, a longtime friend, Julie Young, who has all of her young chess players here. Chess for Success is a great organization and encourages lots and lots of women. Captain Buckley and I were both blessed to have fathers who said, there's no limit, and I understand, Your Honor, that you're here today. Thank you very much. I think you will hear a theme here that parents that tell their children there are no boundaries end up with children doing remarkable things, whether it's World War II or current day. My sister and I both took our first flight lesson at our father's encouragement. We flipped a coin to see who got to sit in the front seat. We flew out of Redmond. My sister actually won and sat in the front for the first lesson. Both of us ended up flying on United States teams in our aviation careers. I flew as the captain of the U.S. helicopter team in what was then the Soviet Union. I can't help but look up at that airplane and think about that experience. And my sister did 2 tours on the U.S. aerobatic team. My sister flies a jet for a bank now in Florida. She was the first woman to win a Gold Cup race at Reno, and didn't just win a race, set a couple of world records and gave the boys a flying lesson. She's an ATP and her husband is an airline pilot. I started, ran, and flew for a helicopter company for nearly 20 years. What troubles me is that I, too, am a Whirly Girl and knew some of the original founding members of the Whirly Girls, including Hannah Reich, who flew the buzz bomb for Hitler, Betty Pfister, who started Corporate Angel Network that now flies all over corporate airplanes giving rides to cancer folks. I used to think that the women with the higher numbers, they're all so old, I'm never going to be there. This Whirly Girl right here is 1,680. I'm 215. I have become the fossil that I worried about. Our company did a variety of things. Our little motto was, your wallet, we haul it. We were one of the prime contractors to the U.S. Geological Survey on Mount St. Helens for nearly a decade. I've landed in the crater many, many times. We took bad bears out of the national parks. We changed the latrine up on Mount Rainier. We made movies, Goonies, Date with an Angel. If any of you have children or grandchildren and you've watched Benji the Hunted, I was Benji's pilot for a little while. It broke my heart to find out that there were actually 3 Benjis, stunt Benjis, because the real Benji was so valuable. I sold the helicopter company and was recruited to become the aeronautics administrator for the state of Oregon, which is a fancy title for a mid-level bureaucrat. But as you heard from Martha, the state aviation now is a standalone agency and runs all of the state's aviation interests, manages a variety of airports, Aurora being the most complex. And we are very fortunate that you joined the board. You're a real asset. Thank you. I was on the board here for a while. Back when Mr. Smith was alive, I was actually at an auction with him when he bought that airplane. It was rather remarkable watching him tear a checkbook out of his check and tell the people that he was with to go settle up 7 figures, but that airplane was one of them. The other treat for me today is to be here with Peggy. Peggy and my mother were good friends. My mother was a wave as well. She was teaching Latin and English in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, and she and 2 of her other colleagues decided that teaching young men and women how to conjugate verbs when the world could be lost for democracy didn't make a lot of sense. So her 2 colleagues went down and enlisted in the Marines, and my mother enlisted in the Navy. And they knew each other and maintained a long friendship until my mother succumbed to the effects of old age several years ago. But in Central Oregon, where Peggy lived, the Navy ladies used to get together, enlisted and officers, and have lunch and reminisce about their service in the country. I know there are a variety of veterans here, including behind me. I thank you for your service, active and retired. Thank you for your service in defense of our great nation. It's a treat to be here today. Thank you for including me.
That concludes our panel presentation. We're now going to open the floor for any questions you guys have for our amazing panel of women. We have a microphone floating around. If you are interested, just raise your hand. You have, 2 young men over there.
We have a lot of
question.
questions over here. These are some really bright kids from Chess for Success. And so we're going to start here with Caden. Caden? Yeah. Caden. What's your question, Caden?
How much times have you ever flew a plane?
We couldn't hear him.
Could you repeat the question?
How many times have you ever flown a plane? we thinking like thousands?
I'll answer that for you.
Go ahead. It actually, we get paid by the hour, so we mark our stuff by the hour. I think it would be interesting to find out how many hours the pilots have.
I have about 3,500 hours, 3,500 give or take. How many do you have?
I have 230.
I would bet that she's probably going to be the record.
Yeah.
Actually, I've been a pilot for 40 years, and if I could tell you my hours in the hangar, I can't even count that high. But as a pilot, I've only flown 2,000 hours.
I have never flown an airplane. Well, I did take flying lessons, and I got to lesson number 6, and I froze on the rudders, and so the instructor suggested I find another occupation. However, I did talk. I was a control tower operator, and General and JAG, I don't care who you were flying. When you were in my territory within 10 miles, you were mine and you took orders from me, the enlisted person.
I have a broad degree of time spent with extraordinary women. In my job, I led a lot of project development for software, and I was the chief deputy assessor for Yamhill County for over 20 years. But I am confused in this day and age about the lip service that is being given towards women. I think women are extraordinary, but the press seems to want to use you for their purposes that I don't particularly care for. I think a battle on your side, telling your story, is really important. And I would like to know what you think about that.
I'm holding the mic, so I'll start. I don't think any one of us ever have apologized for being a woman. We show up, we do our job, we do it as well as anybody or better than some. I was one of the first women, if not the first, carded to fly for the U.S. Forest Service to do aerial delivery of water at forest fires. And the inspector, the FAA inspector, would not fly with me because I was a girl. They had to bring an inspector up from California. But, you know, any one of us could have gotten bitter or cranky about it, but I'll tell you, knowing some of these women as I do, and just having met some and getting a very quick impression, I don't think any of us would apologize for 6 seconds. We take no quarter. We just show up and do our best every single day.
I think she said everything that needs to be said, but I will say I'm fortunate to be in a standards-based organization, and being in the military right now is a fascinating time because, as everyone knows, they're opening up all positions to women as of this year. And I think this is a primary example of something that the press is making a huge deal of, which rightfully they should. It's a major change, and it's much needed, and I think has been a long time coming. But I can tell you that in my personal experience in the military, and I should take this moment to say I'm not speaking on behalf of the Department of Defense here. As an attorney, I have to give that disclosure. No one cares in the military. You show up, if you do your job and you perform and you exceed the standards that have been set, regardless of what your gender is, you are part of the team and no one gives you any flack for it whatsoever. And there are the outliers. There are certainly the people, as there would be in any sector of society, that hold on to some archaic beliefs about gender. But for the most part, I show up, I do my job, just as you said, better than most of the guys, and therefore they want me on the team. And so I'm fortunate to be in an organization that does have those standards, does have the measurables, and they can see that there's certainly no loss and a lot of benefit to having women in all positions.
I want to add to that. There are some things that never change. In the military, everything's pretty much in concrete. But I would like you to know that I am so proud of you young women in the military. I crawled in under the glass ceiling. You have kicked it into shreds.
I want to thank you for raising that point. I think it's so important for us and women to get in front of young girls, to really just share our story, to talk about our background, and for girls to understand, in young women, that there isn't this clear pathway, that it's going to go in circles and zigs and zag, and that is okay. But the more that we're able to do these type of opportunities, and then even yourselves in your own professions and fields, to please share those stories with young women and inspire them, because you just don't know what's going to resonate with them. And then I have to say one thing, so I kind of equate this to my time in sports. I played basketball, and many times I would get on the court with the men, and at one time I remember clearly this man saying to me, "Oh, I got to play against a girl?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, you're going to play against this girl, and this girl's going to ball you up."
I'm also a truck driver, so I've just kind of learned to dish it back. They usually either really like me or really hate me. Either way, it doesn't really matter to me. But, relatively, women equality is relatively new considering how many years we've lived on the other side of that line. And so it's just par for the course, and it's working along. It's getting better. I mean, you can't deny that. So you just take it as it comes.
Yeah, my name's Mark Nevins. I flew in here from Troutdale this morning in my vintage 1967 172. I want to thank all of you for putting this on today. And one thing about aviation is it knows no bounds with what gender you are. And part of the reason it might be out of place for why I came here, but also we're having an issue at Troutdale Airport with the Port of Portland. I would like to meet with the Senator Johnson and Deborah about this. I'm also a member of the AOPA. We support general aviation and also the Experimental Aircraft Association. And I myself am working on getting my instructor rating as an instrument, certified instrument instructor for flying. And I do want to thank this panel for being here. I'm really glad to have showed up this morning and to listen to all of you. And I appreciate everybody else here for coming too as well. And urge your support for any issues that are facing general aviation today so that we all can fly.
And I would second that.
Yes, I have a question about women in the military and the balance of career and personal life and the relative difficulty of that compared to men. So what is the relationship between the ability to have a family and have a career and the advancement in career? And I'm sure it's changed over time.
I would say, Mickey, you want to take this one? I don't have any kids, so you might be a little bit better spokesman on this one.
I also don't have kids.
Well, there you go.
I do have a husband, and we got married last July. By the time we reach our second wedding anniversary, we will have lived together for 6 months. So we got married in July. He deployed in July. He got back at the end of February. He's in El Paso, Texas until the summer. We'll have a few months together, and then I'm deploying to Iraq. So it's tough. It's very tough. And frankly, we're lucky that we don't have kids yet. It is certainly a factor. And I think the gender breakdown is purely biology. It's no matter how we structure it, no matter whose career we prioritize or try to push, if we choose to have kids, I will be the one that's having those children. Not much we can do about that. And so that's a discussion that we have to have. We're both very committed to this career. I'm very passionate about what I do. I intend to stay in, but there is a natural kind of ebb and flow of what jobs you have to take if you choose to have kids, and you have to be willing to have a spouse that is along for the ride, whether it's dual service or if they're a civilian, they need to be in a job that's flexible enough. It's something that we all think about. It's something that we talk about a lot in the military, and you lose a lot of good people because of that. We move every 2 years. That makes it hard on families no matter which way you cut it.
just my own personal experience, it is difficult. And not just for women, men as well. My parents were divorced when I was very young, at age 1, and I lived with my father. And unfortunately for him, I actually had to go live with my grandparents for a few years because he was in the Air Force and he wasn't able to raise a child as a single father in the military at that time. And so I was fortunate that I had extended family that was able to come behind and really support my father. But that is an issue. I mean, it truly is, like you shared, really discussing, what career pathways are we going to take? Are we prepared, even in a 2-family home, when the other person is deployed, how does the person that's staying home hold it all together, be the mom and the dad, making sure that the kids are, very well taken care of, and that they still feel connected to their other half. But it teaches us how to persevere, right? And it's one of the tough parts of the military, but also a blessing in disguise.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then I'll just add one little bit. The military, it was talked very well that it's something you sacrifice, but that's what we do in the military. On the flip side, the military does its very best to help out. I mean, we do child care on base, we have housing on base, we do every support structure we can because we realize the sacrifices that our individuals make. So it's a balance and it's a trade. We take a great pride in what we do every day. Some of that means sacrifice, but on the flip side, some of those kids will have the most amazing history when they grow up. They'll get a chance to live overseas. They may miss mom and dad every so often, because I agree with you, it's not just mom, it's dad. They're both deployed. But they get some of the good stuff and they get some bad stuff, but I will say they'll get more good than bad.
And with that, I would like to thank everybody who came to visit, everyone who sat and listened. Senator Johnson.
Sitting under the tail of this magnificent airplane, I just want to share with you guys a quick story. The first time I saw this airplane, it was still down in Long Beach, and it was in a hangar that belonged to Hughes Tool Company. The door had a sign on it, and I just wish I'd have taken a picture of it. It said, Hughes Tool Company, company secret. And so we were escorted around. It was this building is magnificent compared to where it was. It sat down in kind of a cement trough. And we were escorted around inside the building by some of the original crew that had worked on it. And as we were walking around, I put my hand on a cabinet, and it was alarmingly warm to the touch. And so I called one of the docents and said, do you realize this cabinet is warm? And he said, oh yeah, no problem, no problem. And he opened it up, and it was just rows and rows of spark plugs that were heated and ready to fly. Mr. Hughes apparently had given the order that they be flight ready within a very short window of time, and no one had ever countermanded the order, and so they remained at flight ready and ready to go. It was absolutely extraordinary, and all Oregonians, in fact, I think the nation should be indebted to Mr. Smith and the museum for having rescued this one-of-a-kind, unique part of aviation's history and to display it in this fabulous setting. So I hope as everybody's leaving, you consider becoming a member of the museum. You support it. It's gone through some kind of rugged times, but I hope that you would consider signing up and maybe remembering the museum at your year-end giving. Keeping a plane like this in any kind of condition, and they did huge restoration work on it, costs a ton of money, and I think all of us as Oregonians should help the museum in that curatorial expense. So I just wanted to share that story with you. This plane is so big. I'm 5'4", and we were allowed to walk around in it. I could walk out to the third nacelle in it. It's an incredible flying machine.
And with that, I wanted to thank you for coming to our premier Innovation Intergenerational event. We look forward to being the center where you bring the past and the present and the future together so that we can inspire everybody to take what you have and make it better. Thank you for being here today. If you have any questions, come talk to us. We're going to go grab lunch. You're welcome to come and sit and hang out with us. Thanks.